Hey guys, I'm going to be going over lesson 22's homework tonight. So let's go ahead and get started. Number 1, it says draw a tape diagram to match each number sentence, then complete the number sentence. So let's start off with A. It says 2 plus 1/4. Well, 2 I could show with 2 whole rectangles. And then to show 1/4, I'm going to shade in these two for those two. And to show a fourth, I'm going to draw a third rectangle, but I'm only going to shade in 1/4 of it. So if I counted together everything I had, I'd have 2 and 1/4 because the first rectangle is 1, second rectangle is 2 total, and then plus the 1/4. Okay, if we look at B, we have 3 plus 2/3. So again, I'm going to draw my whole numbers. So I have 1, 2, 3 holes, and then I'm going to add 2/3 of another. So I'm going to draw a fourth rectangle, but I'm not going to fill in the whole thing. I'm only going to fill in 2/3. So that shows that altogether I have 3 holes and 2/3 of another. Okay, when we subtract, it gets a little bit trickier. So first, on C, I'm starting off with 2 holes, so I'm going to draw 2 holes. But this time it says I'm subtracting 1/5. So before I can subtract, I need to separate my holes into fifths so I know what to cross out. So here are my 2 holes, and I'm taking away a fifth, so I'm going to cross out that 1/5 I'm taking away. So now I have 1 hole left because that one wasn't touched, and I have 4/5 of the other. So my answer would now be 1 and 4/5. If I go to part D, we kind of have the same concept. So I'm going to start off with 3 whole rectangles. And this time we're going to separate them into fourths because I'm taking away 3/4. And I'm going to go to my last one, and I'm going to cross out 3/4 because that's what I'm subtracting. 1, 2, 3. So what I'm left with is 2 holes that weren't touched, and then a fourth of the last one. So altogether, my answer is 2 holes and 1/4. Okay, we're going to cross out number 2. If your teacher had you do that one, you can ask them about it in the morning. I didn't have my students do this one because I felt like it was a little bit confusing for what we were studying, but we'll come back to it at a later point for some bonus points. So we're going to cross number 2 out completely. Okay, now we're going to take a look at number 3. Number 3 says solve using a number bond. Draw a number line to represent each number sentence. The first one has been done for you. Now, your teacher may have required you to draw a number line on all of those, and I'll show you what the number line looks like for these. I only let my students use it if it helped them, because some of them, it made it more confusing. So we're going to start off first by using the number bond. So it says solve using a number bond. So I'm going to start with 8. 8 minus 5, 6. So instead of drawing out 8 rectangles, I can instead say, okay, 8 is the same thing as 7 holes and 6/6 of another. And that makes sense because 6/6 is also a hole, and 7 plus another hole would be 8. We're just breaking it down in a different way to make it easier to subtract. And so this is what it would look like on the number line. We're starting off with 8 and we're subtracting 5, 6. So we're going to draw our number line between 7 and 8. And I'm going to separate it into 6 because that's what we're working with here, is we're subtracting 5, 6. If I wanted to label this takes a little bit longer, but I would say this is 7 and 1/6, 7 and 2/6, 7 and 3/6, 7 and 4/6, 7 and 5/6, and we just discovered when we broke down 8 that 8 is the same thing as 7 and 6/6. So if we went back 5, 6, because we're subtracting 3, 4, 5, we will land on 7 and 1/6. So that would be our answer. We could also have said, okay, we'll leave the 7 alone, and we have the 6/6, and if we subtract the 5, 6, excuse me, we get 1/6. So our final answer that way as well would have been 7 and 1/6. Okay, let's do this again. But this time we're going to try it without the number line so you can see what I'm saying. So on part C, it says 7 minus 4/5. So we're going to break up that 7 into 6 and 5/5. Again, that's still the same thing as 7 wholes. But now it's easier for me to subtract because I have some fifths to subtract from. Actually, let's draw the number line just in case so you could see. So we are starting at 6, we're going to 7, and we're going to split it into fifths because that's what we're working with. So we're starting at 7, and we're going to go back 4/5 because that's what we're subtracting. So I'm going to hop back 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And on my number line, that would have been 6 and 1/5. Now, if I had done it just with the number bond, I could have said that 5/5 that I separated out minus 4/5 would give you 1/5, and then you'd be left with the 6 wholes and the 1/5. Let's try it again here. 3 I can break down into 2 and 10/10 because that still adds together to give you 3 wholes. And instead of doing the number line, you could have just taken that 10/10 and subtracted the 3/10 to get 7/10. You still have your 2 wholes. You took away the 3/10 from the 10/10 and you end up with 7/10. So your final answer would be 2 and 7/10. But let's see if we get the same thing with the number line so you can kind of see how they go together. So we're starting off with 2 because we're working between 2 and 3. And we're going to separate our number line into tenths. And we're going to count back 3/10. So let's hop back 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And if I count it up, that's going to put us at 2 and 1/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 2 and 7/10 right here. So we end up getting the same thing either way that we do it. Okay, on number 4, it just wants us to use the number bond, so let's try it that way. 6 can be rewritten as 5 and 4/4. When we chose fourths because we're working with fourths. So I'm going to leave my 5 up there in my answer, and then I'm going to say 4/4 minus the 1/4 that we wanted to subtract, and we end up with 3/4. Okay, let's look at B. The same thing can be done here. 7 is going to be broken up into 6 wholes, and then 10/10. That's the same thing as 7 if I added them together. And now I know that 6 is going to be the whole number in my answer, and I'm going to take that 10/10 and subtract the 2/10, and I'm going to end up with 8/10. So my final answer would be 6 and 8/10. It's just like before with the tape diagram where the last rectangle was the only one that got touched. Okay, let's try here. We're going to separate 5 into 4 and 6, 6. We didn't technically change the 5, we're just naming it differently. So we know our whole number in the answer is going to be 4. Now we're going to take our 6, 6, and we're going to subtract the 5, 6. When we do that, we end up with 1/6. So our answer is going to be 4 and 1/6. Okay, D, same thing. Breaking up the 6 into 5 and 8/8, because that's still 6 wholes total. And so 5 will be my whole number of my answer, and when I subtract 8/8 minus 6/8, we will end up with 2/8. So my final answer should be 5 wholes and 2/8. Okay, let's try it again with E. We have 3, and we're going to separate 3 into 2 and 8/8 because we're working with eighths again here. So I know the whole number of my answer is going to be a 2. And then I'm going to say 8/8 minus the 7/8, which will give me 1/8. So my final answer is going to be 2 and 1/8. Alright, this last one looks scary, but it's really not. Same thing. We're going to move it down 1 to 25, and we're going to break up that last whole into 10/10 instead. So you know my whole number in the answer is going to be 25, and I'm going to say 10/10 minus that 7/10 to get 3/10. So my final answer is going to be 25 and 3/10. Okay, I hope this was helpful, guys. Let me know if you have any questions.